And I call Nick Timothy on impact of the Forest City housing proposal on West Suffolk constituency. Nick Timothy.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I draw your attention to my register of interests and declare that my family and I are local residents affected by the development proposal we are about to discuss. I'm grateful for this debate about the proposed Forest City and especially grateful to the Speaker for allowing me to lead it, given my shadow cabinet responsibilities. I sought the debate because Forest City is such a danger to our way of life in West Suffolk. For those who are unfamiliar with this monstrous proposal, this is it. A city of 1 million people, the size of Birmingham, between Newmarket and Haverhill in Suffolk and over the border into Cambridgeshire. A city of 1 million people, supposedly to service the needs of Cambridge, a city 7 times smaller with only 145,000 residents. A city of the same population density as London, where on average 58 people live in each hectare. All where stand today, ancient villages, communities built on trust and reciprocity, beautiful countryside, family businesses, new tech firms, the international headquarters of horse racing and breeding, and the best arable farmland in the country. The most important thing to say about the plan is its premise is absolute junk. The Forest City developers make specific claims regarding land assembly, compulsory purchase, affordability mechanisms, infrastructure funding, tax treatment, and the scale of state involvement, and none of it stands up to scrutiny. First, the resale model removes residential land value and caps resale at I will give way.
I'm grateful to my neighbour for allowing an intervention. I regard this as quite a bold idea. Like the NHS, that was a bold idea just after the war. So just let us try and use our imagination. Perhaps we'll create a shining city, not a city on a hill, but in the flatlands of Suffolk. And perhaps, just perhaps, a solution to the housing crisis we have in our land.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think we just had it, and the people of West Suffolk will know that local Labour representatives are in favour of the Forest City, which I think is shameful. As I was saying, the resale model removes residential land value and caps resale as inflation-indexed build cost, excluding land, where homes cost £350,000, as promised by the developers. This creates a permanent capital gap of £275,000 per unit. At the scale proposed, approximately 400,000 homes, this implies up to £110 billion of housing capital subsidy paid by government. Second, the plan relies on a development corporation with powers of compulsory purchase, while denying itself increases in land value uplift. For a city of 1 million people, non-housing infrastructure will cost anywhere up to £60 billion in capital expenditure. The developers suggest selling a limited number of commercial plots to cross-subsidise investment, but this falls far too short. Without capturing the wider increase in land value, this is another massive black hole. Third, the plan implies water self-sufficiency at scale. The east of England is a water-stressed region, and a city of 1 million people would require around 170 megalitres per day of additional supply. That's equivalent to 1 South Lincolnshire reservoir or 2 Fens reservoirs in deployable output terms, at a capital cost of up to £4 billion, excluding network reinforcements and financing. There's no plan and no funding for this work, and when I wrote to Anglian Water, they said the developers hadn't even been in touch with them. Fourth, even assuming compulsory purchase at existing value with hope value removed, which I believe is not what the developers have said to local landowners, land acquisition would require around £1 billion of upfront public expenditure. Removing hope value reduces upfront costs, but capping resale prices through a so-called permanent affordability model means there's no mechanism to pay back the capital. In other words, this is yet another black hole. Taken together, these funding gaps suggest up to £175 billion of government funding with no way for the state to recover the costs. When I put these problems and detailed questions to the developers in a letter sent in March, the reply I received 1 day later didn't even seek to provide answers. When their report, We Can Build a City, was published and sent to ministers in April, it failed to address a single one of these very serious challenges. And no wonder. because building a city is far more complicated than these cowboys pretend. Take the government's New Towns programme. These are only towns and not cities, and only 7 of the original 12 schemes are going ahead. Where whole cities have been built from scratch, elsewhere in the world, many have failed. Those that have worked, to an extent, are often artificial new capital cities with the function of government creating jobs, like Brasilia and Islamabad. Often they're in countries where there's still a great migration of people from rural areas to cities, like in China. But even in China, people have simply chosen not to move to many of the new cities, and they stand partially empty. There are similar stories in Songdo in South Korea, Ciudad de la Paz in Equatorial Guinea, and Masdar City in the United Arab Emirates. The reasons for the failure are all too familiar to those of us who have studied the Forest City proposal. These cities are built speculatively, without real demand. There are massive infrastructure costs without feasible revenue generation. They're elite-driven projects disconnected from the needs of real people.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will.
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend for giving way. And whilst in my constituency of Bromley and Biggin Hill we don't have any proposals for the size of the city, there is a proposal to build thousands of new homes on the Greenbelt in Hayes. And would my honourable friend agree with me that this indiscriminate building on Greenbelt threatens communities and swamping public services as well?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you to my honourable friend. It is undoubtedly the case that we need to build more houses in this country, but schemes such as the one that he describes have to be proportionate for the areas in which they're proposed, and they have to come with infrastructure and services and amenities. And I think there's somebody else who wants to give way on the other side.
I'm grateful. On that point of speculative building, I appreciate he's probably not a fan of big, bold projects like this, but would he agree with me that there is a very good example just down the road in Cambridge, where the sale of Cambridge Airport just recently to Homes England is a really exciting initiative that genuinely will provide the homes and businesses we need?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I actually completely agree with what the honourable gentleman says. And I will come on to the needs of Cambridge and the surrounding area. And Madam Deputy Speaker, you will have noticed that none of the examples I just gave is in a Western country, because advanced economies don't build artificial communities from scratch in the hope that economic growth follows. Doing that is the logic of the autocrat and the socialist planner, and there is enough evidence from history to inform us of the chances of success. In truth, the government knows this. In the small print of the New Towns programme, officials were dismissive of Forest City, saying it had no local support, no landowner backing, no broader development interest, and no route to delivery. They said Haverhill didn't meet their economic tests, and the area near Exning and Newmarket has too little water. Simon Dudley, the former chairman of Homes England, called Forest City a recipe for disaster paid for by the taxpayer and dressed up as progress. Simon Lovegrove, an expert in new towns and cities around the world, says, quotes, "There is no need for such a city. The proposal has major flaws, and for the reasons I've already set out, is unaffordable." As Mr. Lovegrove says, according to the employment population ratio and labour force participation rate, a city of 1 million people would have a working population of nearly 400,000. But the city of Cambridge has a working population of under 70,000. The developers talk about the Oxford-Cambridge corridor, but I wonder if they've even looked at a map, because we are on the wrong side of Cambridge for that. So why? I will give it.
Member for giving way. In St Neots and Mid-Cambridgeshire, we're in the path of the Oxford-Cambridge arc, and indeed, our welcoming development around Cambourne and just south of the constituency at Tempsford, there's a new town proposed. The Forest City. Do you agree that the Forest City could just be a huge distraction from that New Towns programme that is actually a credible way of delivering the housing that we're certainly seeing the need for in my constituency and getting on with delivering?
Deputy Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. I agree, and it's not only that it's a distraction from the need to build in the way that the broader region around Cambridge needs. Only today I had an email from one of my constituents who said, "I see you have a debate, please can you emphasise the damage it's doing to people's mental health, with the anxiety it's causing to local residents." So why, if this proposal is so flawed, has it not already been killed off? The developers behind Forest City have won fawning media coverage in The Guardian, The Financial Times and the BBC, and to date the government has refused to say no. In March, the Housing Minister said in answer to my question, this is a quote, "Officials will review this proposal in the usual way, including through a meeting with the promoters." In April, he confirmed the meeting had in fact been held in February. When the developers claimed to be in talks with the Treasury, in April I asked ministers there whether they, their advisers or their officials had met the Forest City team, but they refused to answer. And asked whether the Ministry of Housing advisers had met the Forest City team, I was directed to a publication about meetings held last year, not this year, with senior media figures, not developers. The whole thing to date has been completely evasive. And in a debate in the other place 2 weeks ago, Baroness Taylor, a housing minister, told my noble friend Lord Herbert, this is another quote, "We're aware of the Forest City proposals and will be following how they progress through the local consultations and approvals." But this is the point. Forest City will not go through local consultations and approvals. Its proposers are asking the government to circumvent local democracy and create a development corporation with compulsory purchase powers. The government could just say no, but so far it's refused. And in the meantime, it's local people who are suffering. I've had emails from people who have told me they'd like to sell their house, but say they can't. I've had emails from people who found their dream home in Suffolk, but can't commit to buying it as long as this development remains on the table. People in the Bradleys have been told that their village will have to be flooded to make way for a reservoir. People in Great Ratting and the Thurlows have been told village life will be gone forever. People in Exning, Newmarket and Haverhill have been told their communities will become suburbs. People in Wickenbrook and Withersfield and Hundon and Keddington and Denston and Stradasall and Owsden and Dalham and Lydgate and Coolidge, which like Haverhill, the developers can't even spell, have been told that they do not matter. Their lives will be ruined and they've been told they'll have to live amid a building site for decades, often for the remainder of their lives. And they've been not only disrespected, but actually insulted. The Forest City developers, Shiv Malik and Joe Reeve, bussed in supporters from outside the area to a supposedly local meeting in Haverhill. They cancelled a public meeting in Thurlow because too many locals wanted to come. It was apparently a secret public meeting. Behind our backs, they and their supporters have disparaged local people as too old to have a stake in the future, too white to be interesting, and too rural to understand the obvious joys of city life. In the Financial Times, Mr. Malik was photographed next to what was called a deserted field, seemingly unaware that the farmland in our corner of Suffolk is the best in the country. And the poor behaviour doesn't end there. Malik and Reeve present their plan as an act of altruism for the country and the next generation. But of course they want to keep 160 acres of the city for themselves, which based on Cambridge land values would be worth hundreds of millions of pounds. The chairman of their company, Dame Patricia Hewitt, is opening doors for them and promoting the proposition as in the national interest. She's less open about the fact that Mr. Malik will soon be her son-in-law, and her family therefore has a direct financial stake in what she promotes. On different occasions, Mr. Malik has claimed the support of local landowners when only one is believed to support Forest City, and the rest oppose it. He's claimed the support of the British Horse Racing Authority, which has had to write to him telling him to stop. And he's claimed the support of the Jockey Club, which has also sent him a legal letter. He threatened to sue me for revealing these things, but when I held my ground, he backed down. In truth, Forest City has attracted almost universal opposition among the people of West Suffolk, those living in villages and those in the towns, those who are born and bred in the area and those who chose to move there, those who are young and those who are old, the landowners, the homeowners and the renters, the businesses and the residents. There is value in the rural way of life, even if the Forest City developers disparage it. Local people don't want to see their homes and communities destroyed. This is not about knee-jerk opposition to new homes. We've had thousands of new homes built in the last 5 years. The new local plan proposes 5,000 new homes on top of the 8,700 already marked for planning permission. And while government housing targets have been cut for the cities, they've gone up by 57% for us. To put things into context, Haverhill has doubled in size in only 30 years. Given our proximity to Cambridge, this is understandable. As I said in my maiden speech, we should embrace the opportunities, not just fear the risks of housing demand connected to Cambridge. That's why I've never been an anti-housing campaigner. But the solution to the demand created by the innovation and enterprise of Cambridge is not Forest City. The solution is the densification of Cambridge itself, the development of land adjacent to the city and the construction of transport connections to the towns and villages within a commutable distance. Haverhill, for example, provides Cambridge with workers, including many at Addenbrooke's Hospital. It needs a rail link and not just the often single-lane AE1307. The line between Newmarket and Cambridge should be dualled, and there need to be more services through Newmarket and Brandon. My concern is that this government, setting and missing ambitious house building targets, will see Forest City not just for the impracticability of its plan, but as a big idea that it conceives to show it still has radicalism. The developers are already talking about their pitch to the Right Honourable Member for Makerfield, and some local Labour politicians, and we heard one today, have already hinted, or even given, their own support. I will, yes.
I don't wish to declare my support for this. What I wish to declare is that there has to be some imagination here. It seems to me that my honourable friend from my neighbour hasn't grasped what is the imagination behind this project. We're not talking about simply expanding a number of existing towns. This is a completely new idea. And what does he think about that?
To be honest, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm at a complete loss as to how that doesn't express support for the scheme. And if he's saying he doesn't support it after his earlier intervention, that might be a record U-turn even for this Labour Party. The debate presents us with an opportunity to kill off this disastrous idea and all the anxiety and blight it's causing. So I want to ask the Minister the following questions. I gave him advance notice to make sure that we get clear answers, and on behalf of everybody in West Suffolk, I really do ask for clarity. So 1, does the government recognise, despite prior ministerial statements, that the Forest City developers don't seek to go through, quotes, the appropriate local consultations and approvals, and plan to rely instead upon the legal, financial and political support of central government? 2, for all the reasons I've given, will the government take this opportunity to rule out Forest City for good? 3, in particular, will the government rule out the establishment of a development corporation and the use of compulsory purchase powers for the construction of Forest City? 4, does the government share some or all of my concerns about the financial modelling and affordability gap in the Forest City proposal as presented? If so, where does the government agree or disagree? And 5, will the government publish details of all meetings and conversations held between all ministers, officials and advisors in different departments and the representatives of Forest City, including the chairman and members of its advisory board?
Minister Pennycook.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and please accept my sincere apologies for being slightly late to the chamber.
If you were late, you wouldn't be able to respond, so you got here just in time, Minister Pennycook.
Excellent. I'm very glad to hear it. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I start by congratulating the honourable gentleman, the member for West Suffolk, on securing this debate. I can assure him I've heard loud and clear his concerns about the high-level Forest City 1 proposals. I can assure him I'll reflect carefully on them. I also thank those other honourable members who've made contributions to it. Madam Deputy Speaker, setting aside the detailed criticism made of the proposals in question, the core argument that the honourable gentleman has advanced is that the government has to date refused to say no to it. I think those were his words. I want to respond to this charge head on at the outset because, as the honourable member knows full well, it is not the role of government to opine on every development proposal that materialises across the country. For good or ill, Madam Deputy Speaker, depending on one's viewpoint, we have a discretionary planning system in which schemes of various sizes are judged on their site-specific merits by individual local planning authorities. The Secretary of State has powers to call in or recover planning applications where they involve matters of more than local importance, and they are exercised where necessary. The Department can also take forward specific initiatives and programmes involving the delivery of large-scale new communities. The recent consultation and decision to establish a Greater Cambridge Development Corporation and the ongoing work taking place to progress a New Towns programme are two good examples. But in each instance, government clearly sets out the parameters for its support and consults where appropriate. What we do not do, indeed we're obliged not to do given the quasi-judicial role of MHCLG ministers in the planning system, is to publicly pass judgment on every unsolicited proposal that the department receives. The honourable gentleman looks somewhat confused by that notion. That is how the planning system operates it. But the Honourable Gentleman has kindly provided me with advance notice of the questions he intends to ask. So in response to each of them, let me give him as much clarity as I can. He asked whether the government recognised that the Forest City promoters do not seek to go through, quote, the appropriate local consultations and approvals and plan to rely instead upon the legal, financial and political support of central government. In response, I would say to the Honourable Gentleman that while the size and nature of the proposed development would suggest as much, it is not entirely clear from the high-level material published by the promoters. Their website states, for example, that subsidy is not sought. A clear preference is expressed, however, for a development corporation as the delivery model, but it's not made explicit whether they are seeking government backing for a centrally led urban development corporation or are interested in a future mayoral or locally led approach. In short, we simply don't have enough detail about this proposal to be able to say with any certainty precisely how its promoters believe it should be delivered. When it comes to the East of England, however, the government's focus is firmly on the establishment of the Greater Cambridge Development Corporation and using it to deliver nationally significant growth in Cambridge and its surrounding areas in partnership with local leaders and communities. The Honourable Gentleman pressed me on whether the government will take this opportunity to rule out Forest City for good. For the reasons I've just set out, it is not for the government to rule in or out any proposed scheme in general terms. The Honourable Gentleman is aware that when the promoters of Forest City 1 applied to be part of the New Towns programme, officials reviewed the application and concluded that it did not meet the programme's objectives, specifically the deliverability objective. However, as per the remarks made by Baroness Taylor in the other place on the 10th of June that the Honourable Member cited, it is open to the promoters of the scheme to engage with the relevant local planning authorities and communities about their proposals. He asked me to rule out the establishment. I will give way.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his considered answers to my questions. I think the point is that the Forest City developers are not seeking a process where ministers consider an application using their quasi-judicial role. It's that they are seeking a policy decision to support the development, the creation of a development corporation with compulsory purchase powers. I think that's a different question, and that's what I'd like to press him on. Would he rule that out, or can he not?
The Honourable Member for that question. He preempts the next of his questions that I was going to come to. He asked me specifically to rule out the establishment of a development corporation and use of compulsory purchase powers for the construction of Forest City. I believe I've already confirmed in answer to a written question to him on the 9th of February, but the government has no current plans to consult on the establishment of a centrally led urban development corporation to deliver the Forest City 1 proposals. I don't think we could be more clear than that. The government are not exploring creating a development corporation to take forward this speculative proposal. The Honourable Gentleman invited me to provide an assessment of the financial modelling and subsidy gap in respect of the Forest City 1 proposal. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to do so, even if the evidence base on which to make a rigorous assessment existed, which to the best of my knowledge it doesn't, given that a business case has not even been put together by the promoters. Finally, he asked me to publish details of all meetings and conversations held between government ministers, officials and advisers and the promoters of the scheme. I can confirm that neither I or the Secretary of State have met with the promoters. I have met some of the board members in the past, but not in relation to the Forest City 1 proposals. The promoters met with my officials earlier this year, and proposals were reviewed by officials when the promoters formally applied to be part of the New Towns programme, as we've discussed. Special advisers in our department have had a single meeting with the promoters with the aim of learning more about the proposals, and as he will know, details of meetings that special advisers have with external organisations are published on gov.uk in line with the requirements set out in the relevant guidance. To conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, I appreciate fully the Honourable Gentleman's desire to have the government express an opinion on the high-level scheme proposed. I'm afraid there isn't much more to add to what I have set out already. As I've made clear, when it comes to the East of England, the government's focus is firmly on delivering high-quality, sustainable growth for Cambridge and its environs. We announced the establishment of the Greater Cambridge Development Corporation on the 2nd of June, and the required statutory instrument was laid 2 days later. Subject to forthcoming parliamentary scrutiny and approval, the Development Corporation will be established as an entity A powers and functions statutory instrument will be laid later in the year, which will grant the Development Corporation both plan making and development management powers. The Development Corporation will be expected to work closely with neighbouring local planning authorities, including West Suffolk, engaging collaboratively to ensure that growth delivers positive outcomes across the wider area. And on that note, I welcome the support he's expressed for the government's focus on Cambridge.